Today, we're going to be discussing fights where the losing fighter actually had one of the best performances of their entire career or showed up looking like a brand new version of themselves, the most advanced version of themselves, and they still came up short. They still lost, right? And there's a lot of examples of this. Some of these examples that I'm going to show you guys are actually moments where a losing fighter set a record for strikes or whatever, and they still lost. So we're going to get into this, starting with probably the most famous example, and that is going to be Rob Font and his record-setting performance against Marlon Cheeto Vera, who he lost to. This was the fight where everyone said he got made to look like the Elephant Man. Here's the photo of Marlon getting his hands raised. He doesn't look like he has a single scratch on him. Rob Font looks like he's just literally fought a bear. And in the same fight, it was Rob Font who landed a significant strike record, 271 significant strikes, most of which were punches to the face of Marlon Cheeto Vera, third all-time in a single fight, and a first all-time significant strike record at bantamweight. So he is the record holder for bantamweight most strikes in a fight. He's got more strikes than any of O'Malley's big fights against Moutinho and Marlon Vera. What we saw from Rob Font, I mean, amazing boxing combinations, one of the best jabs in MMA history. I mean, if you're just watching Rob Font in the first round, you're going to assume no one could possibly beat this guy. But then, of course, the combination of Marlon Vera's toughness and his ability to just hurt you out of nowhere came to fruition. He was able to get it done. But yeah, just an example of Rob Font looking unbelievable. Rob Font put such a beating on Marlon Vera, even though he took the worst end of it just because he got hit with the damaging shots and got dropped multiple times. Rob Font landed so much on Marlon Vera, people started saying that Marlon Vera had really good defense. And I understand that that's partially true because Marlon Vera is really good at tucking his chin and rolling with punches, but like, I never really understood that. Marlon Vera's defense, such good defense. It even had some people saying he's a terrible matchup for O'Malley with the defense. It's like, dude, how does he have amazing defense? This guy was getting lit up. Essentially, people saw Marlon Vera doing one right thing, which is, tucking your chin, biting down your mouthpiece, and they couldn't wrap their heads around how it was that he could get hit that many times and still be on his feet. So, his defense is not lacking. It's actually the fact that, it's actually the most underrated defense of all time. How does this guy get hit with 400 significant strikes and not go down? Well, he must want to get hit, basically, right? But we saw in the O'Malley fight, that defense, I think it was a little bit of a myth. Yes, again, he knows how to take a punch, knows how to roll with one, but, he's very hittable. Rob Font's a great offensive boxer. That's basically what it was. It's just that Font doesn't have a lot of pop. And he ran into a guy who is impossible to hurt and impossible to cut. Well, now we've seen Marlon Vera get dropped and cut, but for a long time, nobody ever scratched this guy. It never looked like he was in a fight. He had some super thick skin. And it was just really impressive. So Font, one of the best boxing showcases, still lost just because Marlon had all those damaging moments. But let's get on to the next one. Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz performance against Alex Pereira. A lot of people thought he won this fight. By the way, I'm not going to be talking about robberies. There are a lot of fights that we would consider robberies where the losing fighter should have won, and we would say that they did really well. I'm not going to talk about those just because those are too easy to talk about. We're going to be talking about fights where, there was a clear winner. It wasn't a robbery, but the guy that lost still did really well. I don't think Jan Blachowicz won this fight. Some people do think that he won. But either way, for Jan Blachowicz to be the only guy not the only guy. Adesanya was able to take him down. Let's not forget that. Adesanya took this guy down, out-grappled him. I should honestly put that in the mix as well. We'll talk about that after. But Blachowicz held down Alex Pereira, successfully out-grappled him, fought with a high IQ, and despite having a harder time taking him down in the second and third round, actually held his own on the feet. I was saying going into this, even though Alex Pereira is coming off of a KO loss to Adesanya, I'm worried about Jan Blachowicz just because of how slow he's looking these days and how fast Alex Pereira is. And he's moving up. He's going to have the lighter man skill. And I expected Blachowicz to get dominated and completely outclassed on the feet, but that wasn't the case. I do think Pereira outstruck him, but only slightly. Jan Blachowicz was getting hit with left hooks and not going down, right? Jan Blachowicz was maybe losing the leg kick battle, but he was still landing good combinations on Alex Pereira and having a tit-for-tat, back-and-forth competitive battle. And no one else has really been able to do that and not get finished, right? Adesanya was able to do it in the second fight. He was able to get the finish, but he got finished in the first fight. This wasn't one of those you finish Alex or you get finished type of fights. This was me and Alex Pereira had a nice chess match on the feet. Blachowicz is the only guy that's been able to do that with him. I guess Bruno Silva, right? But that wasn't really a chess match. That was a war. And Pereira, blew him out of the water in the third round. Every striking exchange was pretty competitive. Just impressive how an old 41-year-old Jan Blachowicz can have a close striking battle with Alex Pereira. He did really well in this fight. One of the best performances against Pereira ever, which goes to show how underrated Jan Blachowicz is. Unfortunately, still lost. That just goes to show how good Pereira is, though. Adesanya, all right? We'll talk about him after this in regards to his first fight with Alex Pereira, but I think that Adesanya's one of his best versions of himself was against Dricus du Plessis. All right, I expected a declining, less hungry Israel Adesanya who may do well early on, but as soon as Dricus gets the pressure going, that's going to be it. I think he's going to break. And although Adesanya got finished in the fourth round and got submitted and he got hurt, he got better as the fight went on. Like Dricus, in my opinion, won the first round, but it was the second, the third, where Adesanya did really well. He actually landed a all-time career record for himself. He landed 40 significant strikes in one round. And we usually talk about Adesanya as being a good striker and whatnot. And I've always said he's not really this crazy volume guy. Adesanya is not like a Max Holloway where he's always going to win a tit-for-tat striking battle on volume. Adesanya is not necessarily like the volume king, right? He's more of a sniper. But in this fight, we actually saw the best volume striking we've ever seen out of Adesanya, right? I mean, you look at his fight with Kelvin Gastelum, there was not a single round in his Kelvin Gastelum fight, which was an amazing fight, a high output fight, where he landed 40 significant strikes. He landed 40 plus significant strikes against Dricus du Plessis in round 3. That's very impressive. He was landing 3-piece combos. I think his combinations looked the best in this fight out of any fight of his entire career. So we saw an Adesanya coming off of a bad loss to Sean Strickland actually look really solid in his volume striking and having an ability to throw combos, not just rely on one big moment, or not necessarily saying he's a guy that relies on one big moment, but he's a bit of a one shot at a time type of guy. In this fight, we saw Adesanya actually looking like the guy that his fanboys like to talk about. Like he actually showed up this time and he still lost, which is crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, what's it going to take to beat Dricus du Plessis? Maybe you got to be a sloppy fighter to beat him, right? Because Adesanya was the best striker du Plessis ever took on in that fight. I mean, I guess Sean Strickland's pretty good, but, this was one of the best versions of Adesanya. I'm not going to say the best, but it was a good version of himself. His combos looked amazing. His speed looked good. He was hungry. He looked tough, right? He was gritting it out. He got better as the fight went on. Usually Adesanya is an early rounds guy. That's another thing that I want to mention. I always talk about how, if he doesn't get you out of there in the first couple rounds, he starts to resort to cruise mode Adesanya. And cruise mode Adesanya is like a 7 strikes a round type of guy. We didn't see that this time. So I thought it was a good performance from him, which just means that Dricus du Plessis' win is all that more impressive because he fought a good version of Izzy. But another version of Adesanya that was good, I may as well talk about it, was Adesanya's performance against Alex Pereira the first time, rocking Pereira in the first round and holding him down. We gave Jan Blachowicz some credit. Adesanya, a striker, right? Never, ever used his offensive grappling outside of maybe the Brad Tavares fight. I think he hit an Eminari roll or something like that. But yeah, to hold down Alex Pereira and actually beat him up, like damage him a little bit, and to be up 3-1 based on hurting him and then out-grappling him, that's pretty impressive. And he still lost. Pereira's just that guy, you know what I mean? But it's still impressive. It was a good performance from Adesanya. On to the next one. Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. Daniel Cormier set a heavyweight significant strike record in this fight. 181 significant strikes as a heavyweight. And this didn't even go to the 5th round. I believe it was stopped in the 4th. That's pretty impressive. Like, DC was about to get 200 significant strikes if Stipe didn't finish him, which is insane. I mean, this is a classic example of lighter man skill. You know, DC with the light heavyweight speed going in there, lighting Stipe up. After the first round where he dominated Stipe on the ground, he picked him up, slammed him on the ground. There were multiple rounds where Daniel Cormier landed over 50 significant strikes. So just imagine DC out there, right? Close quarters boxing, dirty boxing, and just piecing Stipe up, right? Piecing him up, landing 3-piece, 4-piece, 5-piece, hands looking like lightning. That's basically what it was. And Stipe still got it done, which was just pure grit, pure craft, right? Pure adjustment. That's how Stipe got it done. Grittiness, right? Surviving the initial onslaught and then making that adjustment, going to the body. And as the fight went on, we saw Stipe start to march DC down. DC started to get tired a little bit, and then Stipe took over in the 4th, TKO'd him. But yeah, Cormier looked unbelievable in this fight. Looked great. Next up, we have when Big Seed Oil and Big Broccoli found themselves in deep waters when the Real Food Cookbook came out. That's right, the release of the Real Food Cookbook at the time was groundbreaking. Big Seed Oil, Big Broccoli, they were worried about how they were going to respond to it, how they were going to continue the facade that, yeah, you got to keep eating all this slop and all that stuff. And, you know, the Real Food Cookbook gave them a run for their money. Unfortunately, you know, we don't have the biggest team over there at Lucas T Fitness, so we have to make do. And, you know, you can't win a war against the established, you know, dominators of the food world, unfortunately. But we made things happen. We actually got Real Food Cookbooks out there. We gave them here, we gave them there. And they're still available to this day. So it was a good fight. It's always an uphill battle. But if you guys are interested, you can check out the Real Food Cookbook. It's code MMA for 30% off. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, check out the Real Food Cookbook, man. If you're interested, let's get on to the next one. Max Holloway against Alexander Volkanovski. Now, this is a tough one for Max because, you know, it's kind of crazy because, yo, I already know, dude. I'm telling you guys, I'm not just making this video to talk about Volk, all right? Come on, man. How are we going to make this video without talking about this one, all right? We got to talk about this one. Max Holloway went out there and took 2 rounds off of Volk, all right? Dropped him, rocked him, socked him. And fair enough, you know, we talk about melatonin gate and whatnot, but let's be honest. Holloway looked unbelievable in this fight. After that second round, it felt like this guy Volkanovski, how the fuck was this guy ever able to beat Max? That was a fluke, total fluke. There's no way this guy is actually better. We're actually seeing Holloway bring reality back. All right. Things are starting to make sense again. Holloway's back. He's the champion. Give him his belt. And then the 3rd round happens. All right. And then the 4th round happens. Okay. Well, you can kind of get my point. We know what actually happened in those last 3 rounds. But either way, Holloway looked unbelievable. He had leveled up. I think this was no sparring Holloway, right? Or was that the Calvin Kattar fight, which he didn't spar for the first time? I think it was this one too. But either way, he looked amazing. I mean, he was piecing up Volkanovski in the boxing. This is the best Max ever did against Volk. He struggled in the first fight to hit Volk cleanly, and then in this fight, he was hitting him clean. Dropped him a couple times, and just made it close. Those last 3 rounds, fought tooth and nail, came up short, got outstruck. Well, listen, I believe Volkanovski ended the fight with like 30 plus more significant strikes in total, but either way, taking 2 rounds off of Volk and then still making it competitive. I know Max can make it competitive, but listen, I'm just kind of laughing because I know that it's like anything that I say is like, automatically, you know, you're trying to big up Volk. That's not what I'm doing. Like, Volkanovski didn't do that great in this fight other than having the greatest comeback ever. But, you know, listen, Holloway took 2 rounds off of him, all right? Be impressed by Max. That's the point. Be impressed. That was an impressive performance. He dropped him twice. He looked like the king of the division. It looked like order was restored. You may as well have just turned off the TV at that point after the second round. You may as well just... some people probably did. There was probably someone that got so cocky after that second round, a Max Holloway fan, that they literally turned their TV off and just started celebrating right then and there and found out the next morning that Volk had come back. That must have been a nightmare, man. Because I remember at the end of this, I was like, man, Volk did pretty well those last 3 rounds. But I think they'll give it to Holloway. They like Holloway. Holloway's the bigger name. Fans want him to win. Even I wanted him to win that night. Because at this point, I wasn't like a big Alexander Volkanovski fan. I still wanted Holloway to win. So I'm like, yeah, they'll probably give it to him, even though those last 3 were pretty freaking close, man. And they gave it to Volk. But a lot of people thought Max won this one. This was a really amazing performance where he came up short. So, yeah. Okay, guys. All right. Okay. Listen, I'm telling you right now, I'm not making this video just for this reason. This is just an interesting concept, but we got to include this. What am I supposed to act like? The Volk that showed up to fight Ilia Topuria wasn't one of the baddest folks ever, man. Quit playing, dog. All right. Listen, this guy went out there and was piecing him up. He was piecing him up with the jab. Listen, everyone that ever said that Topuria fought a wash Volk, go back and watch the fight and tell me Alexander Volkanovski wasn't having one of the most entertaining striking showcases ever. Piecing him up, head kicks, lead kicks, all right? Just fucking mincing him up with jabs, saying, oh yeah, just straight up. Making him look silly in times. And, sure, Topuria did his thing, man. Topuria did his thing. He was all right, too, but, I mean, you may as well just turn this fight off after the 8-minute mark and just be happy with it. But either way, I thought Volkanovski looked prepared. I thought this was the best his kicks ever looked. His boxing was looking great. Speed, footwork. Like, Topuria brought out the best version of Volk. Unfortunately, his defense, Volk's defense, was always a bit of an issue. We really found out the hard way. And Topuria still knocked him out. I wish we saw some grappling exchanges, but yeah, I mean, this is an example where Topuria knocked out and was competitive with, in my opinion, one of the best versions of Volkanovski. I think that this Volkanovski, like, for example, let me just say this. Volkanovski's level from the Aldo fight to the Max first fight, the first Max fight was, he leveled up. He was significantly better. From the first Max fight to the Ortega fight, significantly better. I think this version was significantly better than the guy that fought Brian Ortega. So, I mean, it just goes to show how crazy Topuria's win is. Just unbelievable. So, that's why, I think Topuria might become the GOAT of the sport, because I don't see anyone beating him. I don't see anyone beating this guy. The only thing that would stop him from becoming the GOAT is, he could get knocked out. That's always possible. I think that's the way people are going to beat him, but it's going to be him retiring before he does enough, right? So, yeah, let's get on to the next one. Yair Rodriguez against Max Holloway. This is another Holloway fight. We're doing a lot of featherweight ones, but yeah, this was a pretty impressive performance from Yair. Now, Holloway clearly won this. He held down Yair. Yair didn't look great when it came to the grappling. He got beat up on the ground, but when it came to the striking, I mean, he held his own. Yair proved his toughness. He proved his output. He was going tit for tat with Max Holloway and doing it with like half kicks, head kicks, calf kicks, body kicks. Half of his attacks were just kicks. And, he was putting up highlight reels on Max Holloway, right? Holloway was peppering away 5-piece combination. One of those punches in the 5-piece would actually be of some substance, right? Holloway would go jab, jab, body, up top, and he would smoke him with the right hand. But then Yair would go switch kick to the body, right? Yair would go spinning kick up top, head kick, and a right hand following. Yair was just making shit up in this fight. Looked amazing. Holloway still, though, I mean, nobody puts up numbers like Max Holloway, all right? Nobody puts up numbers like Max Holloway. Holloway still was able to outland him in the striking just because, again, this guy's a machine. So, what's weird about Max Holloway fights? We're kind of spoiled by the Ortega performances. We're kind of spoiled by the Cater performances. that sometimes it doesn't even look like Max is landing that many strikes. And this is kind of one of those case scenarios where Yair looked like he landed a million strikes. Holloway still outlanded him on the feet slightly. But when I was watching it live, because I'm used to seeing, it doesn't happen all the time, but because I've seen the Kattar fight and the Ortega fight, it's a drop off in volume for Max. Even when Holloway is still like out-voluming a volume striker like Yair, it doesn't even seem that impressive just because you're so used to him being able to do that. So it's like a regular performance for him. So, it didn't really seem like Holloway was landing that much. It definitely seemed like Yair was landing a lot. Holloway did land a lot. But yeah, it's one of those things with Max Holloway fights where, the standard for him is so high. But let's get on to the next one. Alexander Volkov against Derrick Lewis. This is impressive. I talked about Daniel Cormier setting a significant strike record. This was a 3-rounder. Now, Volkov got knocked out in the last 10 seconds or the last 15 seconds by Derrick Lewis, who, just, again, this is how Derrick Lewis wins sometimes. He'll get beat up, and then magically, last round, he'll just get all of his cardio back, all of his explosivity back, like it never left. His damage, it's gone, completely gone, and he turns into a bantamweight with the speed he has. But listen, Volkov landed 40-plus significant strikes every single round, right? It just goes to show this guy is truly one of the best volume strikers in heavier weight class history. 40-plus significant strikes in each round. I think, listen, he didn't finish Derrick Lewis like Gane did, but, man, this is up there with the Gane performance. I know Derrick Lewis is hittable, but still, for Volkov to piece him up, and these are heavyweight significant strikes, right? Volkov's not the hardest hitting heavyweight, but, every single one of these strikes has some thud. 120-plus significant strikes as a heavyweight in a 3-rounder. An amazing performance from Volkov. This was on the UFC 229, McGregor-Khabib. Great performance, still lost, still got knocked out, unfortunately. Last 10 seconds, right? That's crazy, but let's get on to the next one. Rountree versus Alex Pereira. This one was a great performance for Rountree. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it was an amazing performance, but listen, he did better than everyone else at light heavyweight, pretty much, right? I mean, not really, because Jan Blachowicz technically did better, but I would say Rountree actually looked like the most dangerous fighter that Alex Pereira has ever fought at light heavyweight, right? I know Adesanya knocked him out. Light heavyweight, though, Blachowicz didn't have Pereira in trouble. Blachowicz never looked like he was able to knock out Pereira. Neither did Jiri. There was never really a moment where Pereira was in trouble in the Jiri fights. Same thing with Jamal Hill. Obviously, that was a quick fight. Khalil Rountree dropped Alex Pereira. I know he was off balance, fair enough, but still dropped him, kind of hurt him. At the end of the first round, Pereira kept throwing those head kicks, and Rountree made him pay every single time, countered him hard, made Pereira stop throwing head kicks. And I was worried early on. I was thinking, man, I think in the second round, I was thinking to myself, damn, this guy might actually be the one to beat Alex Pereira. Like, he's looking fast. He's looking explosive. He's actually landing, right? Pereira looks slow. He looks a little off. Then in the later half of the fight, round 3, round 4, Pereira started to dominate. He found his rhythm, found his timing, and took over. But the early going in this fight, Khalil looked really good. This was a much better version of Rountree than we saw when he fought Jacoby, right? Which I think he lost that fight. He got his hand raised. This was a better version of Rountree than we saw fight Anthony Smith. He looked better against Pereira than he did against Anthony Smith. And it's not, I just think it's because he lived up to the occasion, right? He actually improved and showed up when it was most important. Still lost, though. Still came up short, right? Aljo versus Movsar Evloev. This was a great performance from Aljo, right? I mean, Evloev, known as this really good wrestler. Who's going to be able to take Evloev down? No one can out-grapple him. Aljo took this guy down at will. First attempt. Took Evloev down effortlessly and controlled him. And, listen, Aljo's not necessarily this dangerous guy on the feet, but he actually told us that he was going to take the fight to Evloev, not give him any respect on the feet, actually slug with him. And he went out there and did exactly that. He was throwing step-in elbows, right? throwing everything hard with bad intention. Aljo didn't take a single step back the entire fight. This wasn't the floating on the outside Aljo. This was Aljo actually trying to take the fight to someone. And to see him out-grapple Movsar Evloev in moments, showing the lighter man skill, right? Taking him down, making Evloev look kind of mid. That was impressive. That was very impressive. It was a good performance from Aljo. Almost won, came up short. But again, looked really good in this performance. Let's get on to the next one. This is the last one. Alexander Rakic against Jiri Prochazka. Rakic looked amazing in this fight. Rakic is usually the low output guy. This time, he threw the kitchen sink at Jiri. He was letting his hands go. High output with his boxing. High output with his leg kicks. Trying to knock Yuri's head off, right? Putting everything into his strikes. Also having perfect technique while doing so. High output. Did everything right. The best he's ever looked. And he still got KO'd. Like, dominated Jiri. Lighting him up. Rocking him. Jiri was getting his legs chopped. Stumbling around, and he still lost. So this was an unfortunate one for Rakic, like the best he's ever looked, coming off of a long layoff, hungry as ever, and Jiri Prochazka just like survives and does his thing, comes back, that holy ghost, that holy martial arts ghost that's always on Yuri's shoulder. You got to be Alex Pereira level of powerful to put this guy out. But yeah, this is a tough one for Rakic. Lost this one, came up short after dominating the first round. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. Until next time.